Welcome to the IBMS Lothian and Borders podcast.
Is there enough bagpipe in that? Hello, my name is Mike Gray and I'd like to welcome you to the IBMS Lothian and Borders branch podcast. What's all this about, you might ask? Well, for those of you listening who don't know, the Institute of Biomedical Science, which is the professional body for biomedical scientists in the UK, has branches in all corners of the country, and in the southeast of Scotland, where Edinburgh and the Borders sit, we have a branch. So this podcast was an idea from the branch committee to look at, in the first instance, at career stories of biomedical scientists. Why career stories? There is a lot of information out there on how to get into biomedical science, and there are some podcasts that focus on scientific topics. But from a people perspective, we often get very useful talks from senior individuals in the profession. And as interesting as they are, the committee hit upon the idea of listening to all levels of staff involved in biomedical science with the aim of capturing the stories of professionals you might not necessarily hear from, and to look at all stages of the career ladder. So each story, we hope, will be inspirational. Each story will have a message, and if anything, will highlight the myriad of ways that people get into biomedical science. So if you like stories and finding out about people, then stick around. What could possibly go wrong?
Hello. Welcome everybody. Bit of a special edition. So today I'm here with the Charlie Houston. Yeah, you heard that right. It's Charlie Houston. Charlie Houston, the laboratory legend. Now, if you've been out there and you've looked at any magazines, or you've looked at anything online, or you've looked at any comments that have been posted, you often see Charlie's name there. Charlie has had a huge career that we're going to hear about, and is an ex-council member. Of
a current council member.
Are you a current?
Yes.
Are you still there? Right. Oh dear. So we'll start this then. So Charlie, current IBMS council member. Apologies. Why did I think you were not a council member? This is going to be entertaining in itself if you tell this.
So I was a Scottish regional council member, and then when I left Scotland, I decided that it wasn't right to me to be that. So I resigned, went to the Isle of Man, and then I became a national council member because there was a vacancy.
So now you see, I was right. It's my selective memory, because I knew you were one, and then I hadn't realised you came back.
Right.
We'll just gloss over that bit. Let's start again. Hi, Charlie.
Right.
It's Charlie Houston. Right. If we go right back to the beginning, so way before you did anything, you're at home, you're a child. Laboratories, how?
So I suppose it all started with chemistry sets and a microscope. So I grew up in a tenement in Glasgow. My mum and dad didn't like me playing science in the house. So my next door neighbour, a dear old lady called Mrs. Todd, who was in the flat opposite, she let me experiment in her kitchen. So usual thing, chemistry set, growing copper sulfate crystals and looking down a wee microscope at wee wriggly things. So that sort of got me interested in science, and my brother was then interested in astronomy, and we kind of had a science background between us.
Right. Okay. So
although my dad was a plumber and my mum was a domestic servant, and she actually worked in my first hospital.
So you're sitting round the table, growing crystals and looking at things down the microscope, and then at some point, well, clearly you went to school, and at
Just a
some point during school, did you think about what you might do after you got out of school?
So, went to secondary school. It was in those days. It was a senior secondary school in Glasgow, and I took. It was kind of streaming for universities. I didn't quite get there, so I was really interested in chemistry because we had a great science teacher called Mr. Lancaster,
Right.
who we called Butt Lancaster, if anybody knows that far back in cinema history.
Lancaster, yeah.
So I done okay in my O levels, brilliant. Then I sat the hires, which I suppose is equivalent to the English GCE A levels, kind of. And out of the 4 that I sat, I only passed 1. It was geography. So I then started looking for jobs. I did want to join the Navy, believe it or not.
Okay.
And I'd also applied to Aberdeen University to do marine biology, because that was the sea was an interest of myself. But they went by the wayside. My old man said to me, "No, you can't do that. You can't go to uni." I didn't have the qualifications at that time anyway. He says, "No, you have to go and earn a living." So looked around the Evening Times, that's a Glasgow newspaper, looking at adverts, and I seen one for Roche doing vitamin acid in Dalry, and one for biochemistry at Gart Naval Hospital, and one for pathology, such cellular pathology in the Western in Glasgow.
Okay.
And I was very lucky because I got interviewed and accepted for all 3.
Right.
So, which was, you don't see that nowadays, but there was loads and loads of jobs back in the 70s for biomedical scientists. So I picked cellular pathology because it was a 10-minute walk from my home. So that was, Gart Naval was a bus or a train, and Dalry was miles away. That was away like Ayrshire, you know. So
Where
picked
was
cellular
Path then? Where was that?
That was the Western Infirmary in Glasgow.
Okay, right.
It's now gone, demolished. I was actually responsible for shutting down the biochemistry lab there. So that's another part of the story. So I'd done 3 years there. I had joined the Territorial Army then because my sister's boyfriend was in the TAs at that time. So I joined E Company 152 Lowland Volunteers as an infantryman. So I enjoyed that. In 2 years, went to Gibraltar, Germany. I thought, this is the life for me. You know, why don't I look at the regular army? Well, the regular army was slightly different.
Right.
I joined the regular army in 77.
So, whoa, back up.
Oh, right.
Good. I mean, we're going to need a couple of hours. So, so you went to the Western to do Cell Path, and was that as a trainee medical laboratory scientific officer?
That was an MLSO A, I think.
Right. Okay.
I think.
So
I can't remember whether A comes before B or whatever. It may have been a B.
I was the same. So it was maybe we started off with a B, and maybe I can't remember. It's so long ago.
So I went to Stowe College.
Right. Okay.
And I started my ONC, and I went to night classes to catch up with me hires. So in my first year after I left school, I ended up with ONC year 1. Flyer through it, brilliant, and 3 hires extra. So I got maths, chemistry, and physics at night classes at Allen Glen's Further Education Centre.
And what was the difference between doing it like that, because you'd had a bad experience just prior to coming in with your hires, and then you went back to relook at education? What had changed?
I think just really that I wanted to go further in my career. However, so after that first year ONC, brilliant. So I was probably about 18 and a half, 19 then, quite young, naive, discovered pubs, discovered women.
Yeah.
And that kind of distracted me from the studying.
Right. Okay.
So I done my second year ONC at Stowe and failed it.
Right.
And by this time, I had applied to join the regular army, and I had promised them I was coming in with an ONC. It wasn't a lie at the time, because I thought I was going to pass my ONC. So I went down and got
You were still a
interviewed by
trainee at this point, sorry? Yes?
I was a trainee, aye.
Yeah, okay.
So went down to London to be interviewed by the professor of pathology, myself, and another guy who was training at Stowe College with me, a guy called Jimmy Cooper, who was at Hare Myers. So we got a sleeper down to London, and we thought, this is great, luxury travel. It's the first and only time I've ever been in a sleeper. So we went down and we met the professor of pathology. We got a tour around the Royal Army Medical College, and we thought, yeah, this will do us. And we signed up. You got a day's pay for signing up at the recruiting office in Queen Street, as it was then. I don't know what it is now, I couldn't tell you. So we went and started basic training. We arrived at a wee place called Ashvale near Aldershot, down in Hampshire. And if anybody knows me, I'm quite rotund, and I really struggled with the physical training in the army. My whole 18 years, really struggled with it. So we did the basic soldiering. So it was like firing weapons, drill, you name it. A soldier. You had to be a soldier first, then a medic second, and then a biomedical scientist third and last.
Right. Okay.
So that was your priorities of serving. So we'd done I think it was 22 weeks basic training. And then we were posted to the Queen Elizabeth Military Hospital in Woolwich. And it was a brand new hospital. So brand new that the architect of the time, a guy called Poulsen, had managed to put carpets down in the post-mortem room. So obviously not a clue about labs. So we went there, and what happened there? So I had received the results of my ONC, fail, and I then went to do a Lab 3. Now, Lab 3 course in the Army was a multidisciplinary lab where you went for, I think it was 16 weeks, and that was at the Royal Army Medical College in Millbank, London. Done my Lab 3, came back to Woolwich, and then I was told, well, obviously, you have a choice, Charlie. You can do what's called the Lab 2 exam, or you can go and finish your ONC. So I then went to Bromley Tech and finished my ONC successfully, no problem.
Excellent.
So that was me. I was one stripe, Lance Corporal, and I'd passed all my military training at that time, and I was then posted to the British Military Hospital in Münster in Germany. Now, that was a great place to be. They were all great places, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed that there. So when I was there, you have to do management courses in the Army. So I was sent on my junior NCO's promotion course, and after 3 weeks they sent me back.
Why?
My life's full of wee failures, but that is life.
Okay.
Mainly because of physical fitness. The RSM at Münster wasn't happy with this because one of his lads had been kicked off a course, and he says, right, lads, Corporal Houston, you're going to be a corporal by the end of this year. So you're going to report to my after your PT in the morning. You're going to report to my office in number 2 dress, and that was, to me, turned out very smartly. This is at 8 o'clock in the morning before going to work, because done that military stuff, managed to get my foot in the shop by doing lots of running, which I hate. I hate physical activity totally. So I passed the basic fitness test in those days was a 15-minute squatted run, and then that was a mile and a half, and then a mile and a half in your own time, best time, but you must have done it under 11 minutes 30. So passed that, no problem. Sent back on my junior NCO's course, passed it with flying colours. I always got late to get the second bite of the cherry, you know. So I came back to Munster, and at that time I was working in all departments. I tried to avoid cell path back then because I'd grown to like things like microbiology. I love microbiology, and I like chemistry as well. But one of the things that they put me in the blood bank.
Right.
Now, at that time, obviously, Britain had feared the Russian army crashing through Germany, and we had frozen blood stocks. We had a huge liquid nitrogen container outside the lab, and we had a blood bank, maybe we have about 1,000 and odd units in it. Unfortunately, so we used to do exercises, rehearsals for when the Russian army came through. But we only had one centrifuge that was capable of, you had to wash the cells because it was frozen blood preserved in glycerol. And we processed them, but the centrifuge could only take 4 units. So you can imagine to even get 16 units took a long time because you had to spin them for like half an hour each, 4 units. So that was that. That was later thrown out the window because of advances in blood transfusion. So where was it? All right, so I'd passed my Cottle's course, so I had 2 tapes on my arm. Great promotion. So they thought, right, Charlie, you can go back to Millbank and do your class 1. Class 1 is multidiscipline, 26, just it's 2 weeks short of 6 months. And the reason for that is, if it was over 6 months and you were married, you're entitled to a quarter. So they cut it short, so the end of the married guys didn't get a quarter. So we lived in the barracks in the Royal Army Medical College in London, and we used the pubs next door because there was no military pubs.
Right. Okay.
So we had let's say there was 9 of us on the course, and it was a very hard course because only one of us passed it. So that was another failure, class 1. I was then sent back to Munster, to Germany, and continued. I think I was in chemistry then. Then I got a posting order back to the Royal Army Medical College, not to take any courses, but to serve on the staff. So I was sent down to microbiology because that was my interest at the time. And basically, my main roles there were the virology because it was part of micro. So I was doing rubellas and gonorrhea testing and syphilis. And interestingly enough, we were doing Guthrie's by the old Guthrie method rather than a chemical method. So in their wisdom, because we were servicing all the military hospitals throughout the whole world, so we had all the baby blood spot tests in for PKU and for neonatal thyroidism. So it was decided to combine the 2 services in biochemistry. So they moved away from a Guthrie test for PKU into a chemistry test for PKU. So then responsible for doing neonatal screening, amongst other things. The analyzer back then for the PKUs was a Technicon AA1, which was quite an old bit of kit.
When did in that journey? When did state registration start to kick in?
It didn't. So the reason being is that the British Army had Crown protection. So being we were called medical laboratory technicians then in the army.
Yeah.
And we didn't require it to practice. All you needed to practice was whatever qualifications you had. So I had my ONC, and I retook my class 1 when I was at the college and passed it with flying colours. So,
But if we just pause there for a second, and it's just to explain to people, because some of the folks that are listening to these podcasts will be of varying age brackets, not as old as us. And now, of course, so biomedical science, registered with the Health and Care Professions Council.
yeah.
Um,
So I can go back to that, Mike.
Yeah.
So when I was leaving the army, around about 92, I realised I would have to have state registration with CPSM, the
That's
Council's for Professional Supplementary Medicine. So I was in a lab called in BMH Zealand at that time. So I came back to Millbank, the college, and I had my oral viva for state registration. So that on that panel was Professor of Pathology, the head of the Career Employment Group, and a lady from St Mary's.
Okay.
And it was done in microbiology, because that's what in the army you were used to doing a lot of micro in various places in the world. So, and I do remember it, because I always remember you were showing various things, like a gram film with spore-bearing bacteria on it, or the one I really remember is they showed me one with tumbling motility. Now, you're a microbiologist. Which organism is that?
Tumbling motility.
So it was Listeria monocytogenes.
I was getting there. Because the first answer to your big spore-bearing bacillus is that I was processing that before I got to Listeria monocytogenes.
But that's ancient history, because they don't do these sort of things in micro labs now. They don't look at motility, I don't think.
I mean, the last time I had a coat on was over 20 years ago.
So, right, well, so where were we? So I passed with class 1, and then I done various tours in various places. So I went back to Munster again, and I was what was called the command spare, which is basically the locum for the whole of Germany. Because they tend not to do it for married blokes, but single blokes, you could just go anywhere and do anything. And that was another reason why I got sent to Northern Ireland as well, just during the Troubles. So
did you do the CPSM logbook?
It was a military logbook. It wasn't a blue book. It was a white book.
We're like in a TARDIS here. I don't know where we are. Have we got out of the army yet and done the? No.
Right. So I've done various tours in the army in various Belize, Northern Ireland. Belize was really good, both from a social aspect and from a professional aspect, because we got your malaria. In Guatemala, they had cholera outbreaks, so I had to screen the food handlers frequently because they all had parasites. You clear the parasites up, do another stool in 3 months' time, and the parasites were back. We were told, obviously, not to eat local food, but I totally disobeyed that and just dewormed myself.
Right. Okay. Right.
No. There were certain places you couldn't go for various reasons, whether it was due to the food or to the environment.
Absolutely.
So we've done Belize, Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland I've done 4 times. And I liked it there. I worked with the civilian labs there. I worked with all the GPs throughout the province, because you can imagine that the GPs were scattered in various locations. And left Northern Ireland, and where did I go there? went to Belize, went back to Ease Alone, and at that time they had something called Marilyn, which was manning and recruitment in the lean years of the 90s. So at that time, they were trying to downsize mainly the British Army of the Rhine because the Cold War had kind of finished, and they were shutting hospitals and shutting barracks left, right and centre, reducing the size of the standing army and reducing the size of my corps, which was the Royal Army Medical Corps. So I volunteered for redundancy, and I was successful the third time. So never get in the first time.
They didn't want rid of you the first 2 times, no.
But believe it or not, and so obviously during that time we had the Falklands, and then we had Gulf 1 and Gulf 2. Now, I didn't do any of those, and I was really lucky not to do it. But when they were on, I was considered to be on active service already, because I was either in Northern Ireland, Belize, or Berlin, and they were all considered active duty posts. I know I've talked about Berlin was a brilliant place. Whatever you wanted in life, it was in Berlin. The wall was up then. I'd love to go back and see it with the wall down. I've just not get around to doing it yet. It was one of my bucket list is to go back and see it, because in Berlin I'm rambling now, aren't I?
I'm trying to keep you in the same timeline. So you're getting to the end of the army.
Right. So let's just say I've left the army.
Right. Okay.
So before I left the army, I was you get what they call resettlement leave, garden leave.
Okay.
So I was posted to 205 General Hospital in Glasgow, which was quite fortunate because they said, right, Charlie, hello, goodbye. And I went and lived with my mum and dad for 6 months. And at that time...
I bet this doesn't happen. Does this happen now? No, this doesn't happen now. I don't think
so. No, I don't think so. There was a lot of guys leaving the services at that time. And basically... 205 was actually quite an active unit because they went to the Gulf. That's a Glasgow-based field general hospital as it was in them days. They're all called something different nowadays. They're called medical regiments and things like that. And I don't know the organisation. So, come out of the army. I'm still in the army, and I'm on this garden leave and just told to go and settle into civilian life. So I got a job as a locum at the Nuffield in Glasgow.
So before we end Charlie's tour around the world, an active duty in the army, how long was that time period in total?
18 years, 9 months.
Wow, that's a long time.
I'm an old person.
That's a long time.
I left in 94.
Right, okay. I mean, that's, I suppose, relatively speaking. Yeah, you're still in the I was in the I joined the NHS 10 years before you left the army. 1985. So, wow, that is a long time. That's a hell of a life, even in itself. That there. Right, anyway, so...
Right, so
you're on gardening leave.
I went to work for Nuffield Hospitals. It wasn't actually Nuffield then, sorry. It was a private lab called Cleveland Medical Laboratories, who were ensconced in all the Nuffield labs throughout the UK. So I worked with them. They had a vacancy for a deputy lab manager. And at that time, I was doing biochemistry because you get on-call money for biochemistry. So the wee shing, I'll do the on-call. It was multidiscipline. I was doing transfusion, hematology and biochem, running a service for the assisted conception unit as well. So that was it. And then Nuffield decided to bring all the private labs into Nuffield, which is a charity. They don't make a profit, they make a surplus.
Okay.
So they got rid of what was called Cleveland Medical Labs, and I stayed on. I was 2P'd across to Nuffield Hospitals. So I was there, must have been about 5 years or something like that. And I met my wife online dating, terrible thing. It was actually a very good thing. So I decided to leave lab work, but just do a bit of localing throughout the country.
Okay.
And she already had one coffee shop, so we bought another 2 coffee shops, run them. And that was one of the biggest challenges in my life, to be nice to customers when you thought they were horrible people.
So did you do this while you were locuming?
So initially I didn't, because we bought two shells basically, and I helped Helen project manage bringing them into our reorganisation, and then I got a wee bit fed up with being a waiter and things like that, so I went locuming again, and I got a job in Barnsley as a locum in micro, and then I went to the RAH in Paisley as a locum biochemistry. I'd done 2.5 years as a locum there.
Wow.
That's quite long. But
that is quite long.
I then went to do locuming at IRH in Inverclyde. 3 years I spent there as a senior locum. So that was very good. So they offered me a full-time post eventually, and I took it because at Inverclyde Royal Hospital I could get the ferry back and cross the Clyde, which was quite a good way to travel to and back from work. So NHS Clyde was in quite bad financial difficulty in that time.
And when was this roughly? This must have been...
Oh, this would have been about 2000, I think.
Yeah.
About then, maybe just... When did I get married? So I got married it's probably 2002, actually.
Listen, folks, we've made it into this century.
So I was recruited as from a locum to be in a band 7 at Inverclyde. Great.
Right, okay.
Brilliant. Then they reorganised NHS Greater Glasgow, became NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, because Clyde was in financial difficulty. And they said, right, Charlie, there's too many band 7s here. You need to go. And I'm going, where to? So
had Agenda for Change, this must have been 2004 onwards, because that's kind of when Agenda for Change started. The pay system in the UK that we use, we all changed, everybody, to Agenda for Change round about 2004ish.
That would be about right, aye. Because I was there as a locum for 3 years, and I was there as a band 7 for about 2 years. So that's probably up to 2005, I think.
Yeah.
Or thereabouts. No, even 2006 probably. And
because prior to all of that, but you would have been on the Whitley Council's pay scale.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were on call rather than shifts.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and at Inverclyde, the on call was, you could get your head down for a wee bit. You know, it wasn't what I would call it wasn't a busy lab. You know.
I'm sure they won't say that these days.
No, I mean it's all shifts now. You know.
Oh yes.
So I went and visited other labs. I went to Paisley. I went to the as it was the Queen Elizabeth now, and I went to the Royal. And obviously in Scotland we have lifelong protection. Now, well, we did in Glasgow anyway. I don't know about the whole of Scotland.
Yes, for certain circumstances, but it may vary. Yes.
So anyway, I was accepted because of my travel arrangements to work at the Royal in Glasgow.
Okay.
So obviously it wasn't as convenient as getting the wee ferry across the river to Inverclyde, but hey ho, they agreed to pay my travel for 3 years, I think it was. And the cream on the top of it was I was a band 7 obviously, and they said, you're protected, so you keep your on-call level of pay, and you don't have to do shift system here. So I was 95 at the Royal, and quite nicely getting protected, because it's lifelong protection. So anyway, I was there, and we were getting a new tracking and shifting the analysers around and all that. And then an 8B job come up, and I was looking at the pay scales and trying to justify to myself and to my wife, right, so you take a drop in pay initially, but you'll catch up in 2 years, 3 years' time. So that's what I did. I went for the post of laboratory sector manager and point of care coordinator, and I enjoyed the point of care, I really did. Going back, I forgot. So I'd come out of the army with class 1 and no BSc, nothing.
Right,
and went
okay.
straight. So I decided to try to chase an AA post. And I was
Right.
told by my boss at the time, Charlie, you would love it. Unfortunately, you've not got a master's or anything like that. So I went away. I done a master's online at Greenwich. Brilliant course. The modules I took were point of care, robotics, quality management, and clinical governance.
It is
Really-
a good course. Where on the Charlie timeline is that? So is that straight
So that's-
after coming out of the
That's
army?
coming out of the army and after being a locum. So
Right,
I
okay.
was in a,
Is this
I was in a
before the
full-time
coffee
band
shops
seven
or
post.
after the coffee shops? It's during the coffee shops.
So it was after the coffee shops, because I was doing the coffee shops and locum at the same time. Towards the end of my locum time.
Right, okay. So, and the Masters was before thinking about that leap from band 7 to 8B, which is a hell of a
It was
leap.
before that.
Yeah.
So I had a few personal problems in my life, as everybody does, and it took me 3 years to get, 3.5 years to get my master's. Now, I'd got funding for
That's
the
not bad
modules.
part-time if you did it part-time.
I got funding for the modules initially because I was doing them as CPD to get a postgraduate diploma.
Yeah.
However, it then came to my project and there was no money. So I self-funded my project. I went and did the work, the lab work at weekends using donated reagents, and I got my master's in. So that was it. So I was then I was then transferred up to Glasgow to the Royal, which was 2 hours away. So not an inconsiderable travel when you're a non-driver like me. So it was a bus and a train from, I don't know if you know the area, Kilcreggan, which is,
No.
if anybody knows the west coast of Scotland, it's near Faslane Naval Base,
Okay.
outside of Glasgow. So I was commuting 2 hours each way, and the bad thing was that if I missed the 7 o'clock bus, I had to wait for the 8 o'clock bus. So I had to go for a pint.
Oh, of course.
It's-
Like you do.
So that was my life for a couple of years. So then Glasgow started to downsize North Glasgow laboratories. All laboratories really, because they shut the West Infirmary. So that's where I'm back to dismantling the lab, kind of where I'd started. So we had that Abbott Architects there. Obviously, the Abbott guys dismantled their machines, but we went down to the Western, and for some reason there was a huge amount of glassware there. Nobody in labs uses glassware nowadays, I don't think. Not many places. So I gave that to Stowe College. They were quite grateful for that for some reason or other. So we shut the lab down because the A&E department had shifted to the Queen Elizabeth at that time, and they had a big brand new lab built, quite a good lab, and that was up and running, and shut the Western down. They made Stob Hill from a lab of about 6 or 7 biochemists down to a one-man post. I'm really going to be political there, but I shouldn't be. So
no, let's stay off the politics.
Well, actually, I don't live in Scotland anymore, so that doesn't matter.
Oh, you can say what you like then. You can say what you like.
So they kept the Stop Hill lab open, and they were doing maybe 10 samples a day biochemistry, very little. The main lab at the Royal was doing 4,500, so that was quite busy. And Gartnavel, we had to keep Gartnavel because Gartnavel General Hospital was a regional oncology centre.
Right, okay. Yeah.
And we ran all the tumour markers there, which made sense. Again, small lab, two analysers, and a small number of staff, probably about 6, I would think, and no out of hours there. And there was no out of hours at Stop Hill, so all the out of hours was condensed into the Royal, and I wasn't doing out of hours. And then I took the 8B post because I'd had my masters then. People tended not to apply for promoted posts in Glasgow because they were on the lifelong protection. So took the 8B post, managed to get back up to where I would have been on a protected band 7 scale, and ran that service in North Glasgow. So round about.
So when was that? When did that start? The 8B post.
When did it? Must have been about 2015, 2018, 2015, 2016.
Right.
Somewhere
okay.
around about there.
Yeah. And they'd built the Queen Elizabeth by that point, had they?
Aye, I know.
Because we still think that's new.
Right. So I was 8B from 2014 to 2018.
Right, okay, got you.
And then, so I did apply for a couple of HC posts, but no luck. There's only 3 in Glasgow in biochemistry. I applied for all 3 at various times, unsuccessful. I thought, what the hell, just stay as an 8B. However, one of my dear colleagues pointed out a wee advert in the Gazette. Sorry, the Biomedical Scientist, as it's now called.
Okay, yes. We no longer call it the Gazette. And it used to be really, really thick as well. Do you remember?
Aye, that's because the job's in it.
Aye.
Nobody advertises it anymore because of the cost.
But that's what people used to get it for. Sorry, the jobs.
I know.
It's much.
I was one of those people.
It's much more academic and improved now.
Yes. I think it's a brilliant publication. So she pointed out to me, Charlie, have you seen this job? I says, it's an 8B, same as what I'm on. Because I'm quite financially driven. You know, she says, well, think about it. It's on the Isle of Man, look at the salary scale and look at the tax situation. Because in that circumstance where I was as an 8B, I was paying 41% income tax. Now, the 1% always gripped me because that was in Scotland. That would be my people down in England were getting 40% tax.
True.
But that 1% gripped me. I think it's 42% in Scotland now, anyway, for in the higher earners. So I went and got interviewed. I took myself, my wife, my father-in-law. We went on a weekend to the Isle of Man. Loved it. They offered me the job, and it's not part of the UK. You've listened to Fiona talking about this.
Yeah. We had a whole 40 minutes on the Isle of, well, not all the Isle of Man, but she's had a hell of a tour of duty as well.
So I loved it there because I was going from when I was an 8B in Glasgow, I didn't do much science. It was all management and all people management. And I had quite a few challenges. So quite a large number of staff as well. So when I went to the Isle of Man, there was 8 of us, and I loved it. And I went back to doing bench work at the weekends.
Okay.
Because very small team. There was only 5 of us doing out of hours, and just loved, going in at the weekend, get my hands dirty. Well, I was wearing gloves, obviously, and and doing that, as well as doing like the management stuff as well, because went through a whole tender, and that was interesting, because although I'd been slightly involved in Glasgow in the tender side of things, I and the ex-lab manager and the guy from procurement were the tender team,
Right, okay,
and,
yeah.
and we got to see quite a few different managed service type providers, and that was interesting. And we picked somebody at the end. I mean, I'd written the tender doc, so I knew what I wanted, because I'd been in a few labs in my career and I'd experienced a few different suppliers, and I kind of knew what I wanted, but obviously it was all down to the tender spec. So picked a supplier there, and then COVID came along. I think we're up to COVID now.
Yep, well, that'd be round about 2020.
Right, so COVID came along, and our workload in biochemistry plummeted. Microbiology went sky high. Obviously, they were doing PCRs and things like that. And I was very fortunate in Isle of Man, because we became virus-free for good long periods of time. And interestingly enough, well, another area that was virus-free was the Channel Islands. So the Channel Islands and Isle of Man, we had a reciprocal agreement where we could go to each other's islands during COVID, because we were all COVID free. And obviously the hospitality industry in the Channel Islands had really taken a really bad hit, as did the hospitality industry in Isle of Man. So we went on holiday to Jersey, because we couldn't come to the UK, because we'd have to go through all the isolation coming back.
Oh, right. So you had the Isle of Man and the Channel Islands as UK principalities, if you like.
No, they're crown dependencies is the correct term.
Sorry, I get the wrong term. Crown dependencies, out with the structure of stay at home, etc., with their own healthcare systems.
Yeah.
But then with a reciprocal arrangement whereby people from the Isle of Man can go to Channel Islands and back and forth. And wow. Do you get your own Isle of Man passport? I forgot to ask.
No, it's a UK passport.
Oh, is it?
Right. That can have Isle of Man on it.
All right, okay.
But the thing is, I know that a lot of people who have UK passports with Isle of Man have trouble at some immigration centres, going into, I think the one that strikes me was Greece. People were having problems because it said Isle of Man. You along the lines of holder has the right of abode or residence in the UK and the Isle of Man. Right. The Isle of Man wasn't. I'd also been, by the way, looking at jobs in Guernsey and Jersey and been for interviews there. We decided against the Channel Islands because the residence restrictions were quite strict there. Whereas on the Isle of Man, you can go in and buy a house. You got the money or get a mortgage, no problem. And that's what we did. So ran the biochemistry department for, 5-6 years, and then I decided, for a variety of reasons, that it's time to hang up the white coat, or semi hang it up, because I didn't hang it up completely. So I left there, handed over to a really great guy, and retired over here to the mainland. There was nothing sending me back to Scotland that I thought about. My wife has friends and relatives in the Fylde coast, so we came back to near Blackpool and settled down. And then I decided, I'm bored.
Right, okay.
Let's do some institute stuff. So, for example, last year I'd done 26 registration portfolios and a dozen biochemistry specialist portfolios.
Before we get into the institute side of it, so you've had this really varied and fantastic career. Your involvement with the IBMS, though, because we've been through some milestones. We've got 1994, and we've got 2000, and we've got you retiring, and we've got the length of time in the army. When did the IBMS journey start? Because it ran parallel to your career, didn't it?
Not really, because I didn't really have any strong affiliation or link with the IBMS up until '94.
Right.
So
okay. So what happened in '94? What happened?
I was working in Nuffield, and it might have been the change from CPSM to HCPC and CPD. So I became the CPD officer at Nuffield, and I joined the local IBMS CPD group, who was led by a great lady called Betty Kyle.
Oh, we know Betty Kyle.
Yeah. So Betty was very much an inspiration to me. And we had this group, and we decided, because I was trying to find out what CPD was all about. You know, being in the army, yes, I was doing CPD, but I didn't know I was doing it. You know.
Yeah.
So I'd been a CPD officer. I was trying to tell the guys in the lab at Nuffield, right, this is actually CPD, this learning talk, you know. And it was her that introduced me to doing portfolios, because I shadowed her at York Hill Children's Hospital to do a haematology registration portfolio. And I thought, oh, I could do this, or maybe not. So I shadowed her, and then I went and done one myself at her lab, actually, in Lanarkshire.
Yeah.
At Monklands, I think. And that was really good, because that trainee that I did then, it wasn't in haematology, it was in biochemistry. That lady I did then, 4 or 5 years later, I'd done her specialist portfolio in biochemistry, and I didn't remember her, but she remembered me. and that was a real buzz for me.
Cool.
You know, to be remembered as somebody who'd done something. So and then I continued. So again, Betty introduced me to going on council. She was the Scottish regional member. And she said, Charlie, why don't you do this as well? And I said, no, I'm not interested, Betty, you know, going down to all these trips down to London and all that. She said, no, just come along and observe. So I went and observed at a council meeting. I thought, well, this is important stuff, this, you know. It's getting the direction of the profession. And I became quite an involved professional from that time on, you know, through Betty's influence.
Yeah.
So I've got her to thank for my time on council and for doing all these registration specialist portfolios, and even my work for the Science Council, because I do stuff for the Science Council as well.
So your IBMS Scotland stint, that finished when?
That's when I went to the Isle of Man, and when did I go to the Isle of Man? It must have been 2020. No. Must have been 2018, 2019.
Because my schoolboy error at the beginning was that I'm calling you an ex-IBMS council member. And of course, so I remember you being, it must have been round about that time, because that's where I remember you being on the IBMS council from. So it must have been
I took over from Betty.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, you've sneaked in under the radar when I wasn't paying attention. And you're a national member. So for anybody listening out here, we've got regional members of council, and there's a certain number of national members of council as well, aren't they? It's like the general population votes.
Yeah. And we're all elected, you know, by, like, the Scottish people are elected by Scottish members, and the Welsh people are elected by Wales, and the national members are elected from everywhere. Yeah.
So how far are you into your national term of office?
So we now have a rule that you can only do a total of 9 years in council. So
right, okay.
It's counted up. So I had the time in Scotland, the time in national, and I've got a year left now before my 9 years is up. And then that would be You can take a year's break, I think. I don't know of anybody who's done it, because people who tend to leave council make room for the youngsters coming through, because don't really want old people like myself on it,
So that's really interesting. I didn't realise there was a rule. And do you think that's specifically why that's been put in place, so that it doesn't get stuck with people that want to be career council members?
The debate on it. So there were some people who were on IBMS council, had served a considerable number of years, and you really need to make room for the youngsters coming through, because they're more au fait with what's happening on a day-to-day basis in the labs.
Yeah.
I'm retired now, so yes, I know what's going on in the labs because I visit them, but a lot of people don't. Once they retire from the NHS or whatever organisation they're working for, they'll not actually visit a lab, and you only get to know what's happening in the profession by going out there. I was doing a registration portfolio today, and it was in Cell Path, and from when I started in Cell Path in 77, I think, 74, it's come on leaps and bounds. The guy was showing me this imaging system where they take the photos of the slides, and the pathologist looks at them off-site. I think that's brilliant.
Digital pathology.
Yeah, it's happening.
It's happening.
And even Mike was going, like AI. I was at a lab in Leeds, and they've got, is it Kiestra?
Yeah, Kiestra. Yep.
Kiestra.
Yeah. From BD.
That to me, I think is brilliant, because obviously biochemistry automation. I think it's brilliant, but I don't want to see the old techniques disappear. But there's new techniques coming in.
Yeah.
It's like, I went to a hematology lab, and the guy was using LAMP for malaria. Not a LAMP, but the LAMP test.
Yeah. It's a variant of the PCR test, isn't it?
Yeah, when I was doing malaria, it was thick and thin films, and looking down a microscope and saying falciparum or malaria or valley or whatever, So the technology's changing, and obviously some of the old schools are going out. I mean, nobody makes their own media nowadays, do they?
No, most people buy it in, ready-made.
Yeah, because one of the basic skills that I was taught at the Royal Army Medical College was making up your own media from scratch. Mm-hmm. I can remember making Robertson's cooked meat medium from beef hearts.
Yeah, I've done all that.
And people sort of look at you when they. I mean, there's probably some people listening to this going, "What's he on about?"
Well, I mean, I'm an ex-bacteriologist, and I couldn't remember that tumbling motility is a sign of Listeria monocytogenes. So I made a schoolboy error at the beginning. So after you retired, you talked about the Science Council and the various other things that you've got going on. Can you expand a bit more on those?
So England are very much into the apprenticeship models. So I do endpoint assessments for Nottingham Trent University, Salford University, and I did do them for the Liverpool John Moores. Now, I think this is the future of the profession, is to get these guys in working as band 3s, band 4s, whatever they're called, or trainees, and do the apprenticeship route where they're doing time in the lab. Because it's kind of the way I started. I was doing time in the lab and then doing a day and a night at Stowe College.
Yeah.
And the ones that I've done the assessments on, they really are stars, in my opinion, from the 2 universities that I've done this year so far. They're really, really good. I'd be more than happy to have them in my lab as a lab manager, And that's the same when I do the registration portfolios. I think, would I have this person in my lab working for me? And generally the answer is yes. There are a few that are a bit, but generally, certainly the apprenticeships are all stars, and the projects are really good, top class stuff.
Yeah.
And I admire the fact that, I mean, some of them are, I'm not going to say quite old, but they're not as old as me. They're in their 40s. They've done a bit of time in the labs, working at the bench, or MLAs or APs or whatever, and then they went on to do, with the support of their employers, an apprenticeship with one of the universities that are offering it.
It's a great way to do it, yeah.
And I think it's the way of the future. And I hope it is, because I do think that the standard of the calibre of people coming through that route are really good.
I couldn't agree more. I love the modern apprenticeship scheme, and I love the fact that people can come in. I mean, there's a multitude of methods now to get your HCPC registration. There's no wrong path. Hashtag, as they say, hashtag no wrong path. So your Science Council stuff then. So now that so let's assume that your IBMS activities are going to be wound up, yeah, and you've got your Science Council stuff and your assessments. Are you still going to maintain an active life doing that?
Just so I can see IBMS coming down slightly in the council work, certainly, and committee work. But last year I applied to be a UCAS technical assessor.
Of course you did. Of course you did. Because you're Charlie Houston, right? Of course you did.
Well, I was thinking, what else can I do with my time? I can only take the dog out so many times. My wife looks after the garden in the house. Why not do a wee bit of UCAS work? So, well, I signed up, and
be gentle with us when you come and visit us.
Well, you're a micro lab.
No, weird. So I do all of it now. So I do
all
the whole. Yeah. But Edinburgh's a lovely place. So you're more than welcome, Charlie, to come and look at whatever you like. So have you started doing those as a UCAS?
So I've done assessor? So the route for UCAS technical assessor is you do 2 as an observer, and then you do 2 being observed. And next week I'm doing my first one to be observed. So
is this going to be an exam that you pass or fail?
I don't know, Mike. I don't know. I think the older I've got, the more successful I've got.
It would appear so.
And to be honest, I must thank my wife for driving me in when I was doing my masters, because she really would push me forward at the masters, and I was grateful for that. And she's the same with these, like doing this for UCAS. She's 100% support.
Oh, that's amazing.
You do need family support for doing things. I mean, like she says, "Where are you going this week?" "Oh, I'm going down to Liverpool, Whitford." So,
and if it's further afield, it's always a night out.
I've got the one I'm doing is down south next week, and that's 2 nights. It's a day and a half assessment. But she gets a peace and quiet from me, and I get peace and quiet from the dog.
Brilliant. So, is there anything else that you could possibly do? Because I think if we look back at your career, people will be astounded by the level of variety, the places that you've been, and the tasks that you've taken on, and the responsibility that you've taken on, and the professional chops that you've taken on as well. You've done fantastically well there. Should we not be putting you up for an MBE or an OBE?
No, don't be silly. Don't be so silly. The only other thing that I have looked at and I've applied is to be a trustee at my local hospital.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because I think with a scientific background, I think and a lot of experience in healthcare. I've got a lot to give from that aspect.
I think you
But
absolutely have. Yeah.
we'll see how that pans out. The time is not onerous, and obviously, because like being an IBMS council, you are a trustee for the organisation,
Yeah.
and you have to leave the operational guys to do the operational bits, and that's something that I didn't quite get before I went on council. You know, the operational side can be complex, even in a relatively small organisation like the IBMS.
Yeah.
But for like my local hospitals, Blackpool Hospital, it's a big hospital, you know, and it's a
Yeah.
big health board as well, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I go down. I went down there to give a chat last year, and I do their placement students verifications, and we try to. I was quite active in the west of Scotland, as you might recall.
Yeah.
I've now quite active on getting to be active in northwest England.
Well, I told you at the beginning of this that we'd just make it up as we went along, and we did. But it's been a absolutely fascinating and fantastic journey. I've got one last question for you.
Go on.
Well, it's a question in two halves. What advice would you give your younger self? And then, what advice would you give anybody thinking about doing this? Because that's what this podcast is about.
So my younger self, because I was a failure a couple of times, I would say, buck up in your 20s, because that's when all the stuff happened. But I probably wouldn't undo it, you know, because it was part of my life experience, you know, and there is a life outside the lab, you know, that. So I wouldn't advise my younger self to do anything different.
Right. Okay.
Apart from what I wish I'd done is I wish I'd left school and joined the army earlier.
Got you.
That's the only thing, because I had a brilliant time in the forces. Youngsters come into the profession now. I would say it's a struggle, because there are lots and lots of jobs, lots and lots of students out there, newly with degrees, people in apprenticeships, people who are MLAs in labs, people with HCPC, people without HCPC, international students trying to come into the UK. It is very challenging for you. I do a bit of mentoring as well, and it's very challenging for these youngsters to get jobs. If you can get a job as an MLA, good luck to you. But some jobs as MLAs, they won't give you any time for training to get on your registration, and you might have to do that on your own hook, you know. And if you have to, do it, because the route to success in this profession is HCPC registration to start with. Your degree, yes, brilliant, but the thing is, if you're not HCPC registered, you're not going to get a job as a biomedical scientist, and you can't use the title as a biomedical scientist either.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Charlie Houston, the legend that is Charlie Houston.
I'm not a legend.
The current national IBMS council member, who's retaught me about tumbling motility and listeria today.
I might be wrong. I mean, that's a very old memory.
I think you're right. You see, I think you're right. It's been an absolute pleasure, Charlie. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk to everybody.
You're welcome. And
so,
cheerio to everybody.
Yeah, well, it's cheerio from him, and
you might see me kicking about in your lab one way or another.
I think that's a distinct possibility. Okay, fantastic.
Right.
See you, everybody.
Cheerio.
Bye.